Hi everyone. Hope you're having a great afternoon. I'm sorry that we won't be meeting tonight in person, but I thought that I would put together this little video for you to make sure that we're all on the same page about upcoming assignments and expectations and what happens during our next class, which will be our last in-person meeting. Okay, so first things first, we're bringing your participation survey along with you to class tonight. I obviously can't collect them since I'm not seeing you. So if you could please submit that in the Dropbox by tomorrow, that would be great. If you completed it in Word, you can just submit the document, and if not, if you wrote it out by hand, you could just take a photo of it and submit the photo or PDF. Sections A and B of your project were due in the Dropbox before class today, along with rubrics for both of those sections. Just a reminder that your rubric should be a separate document from the actual Part A and Part B of the paper. So moving on, our next assignment is going to be your annotated bibliography. So remember we talked about that annotated bibliography is taking the place of the reflection journal critique. So the assignment for that is you will look at 5 recent peer-reviewed sources that either have something to do with the intervention that you chose for your project or just in general positive behavioral supports. And you're just going to write a 1-paragraph annotation for each of those. So I know sometimes with APA we look at a 2-paragraph annotation. I just want just one. But do make sure, of course, that it's in APA format. So, like I said, it can be the intervention that you used for your project, or it could be general positive behavioral supports. What I will say, little preview, you in Part C are going to have to cite some research, and the research that you cite, you'll need at least 3 peer-reviewed sources that are connected to your intervention. So it would make things easier for you if at least 3 of the 5 articles that you chose were actually about your intervention. So something to keep in mind. The annotated bibliography is due in the Dropbox by April 5th, and you'll see it, I believe it's organized under the journal critique section, so you'll see its Dropbox there. Okay, so our last section of our project is Part C. And Part C is sort of an analysis and reflection section. You definitely want to read over the template and also look at the example that's on eCampus so that you can have a clear idea of what the expectations are around that. Make sure too that you are looking at the rubric not just when you're finished with this section of the project, but that you're actually using it to complete the project appropriately. So the basic elements that you'll need to include for this will be a treatment integrity checklist. So there's a PowerPoint. I think I actually put it up on last week's module so that you would be able to look at it before tonight's class. So you're just creating a basic treatment integrity checklist. If you look at the examples given, there are a couple of different ways to do it. And basically all you want to do is you want to use this to make sure that interventions are being implemented with fidelity. So what that means is if you were someone who were advising a teacher on implementing this intervention, you would take them through everything. You would teach them how to do it, the implementation, the collection of data, the graphing of the data, and then ultimately you would pop back in from time to time with your little checklist to make sure that the intervention was being implemented with fidelity. So in other words, are they doing it right? And are they doing it in a manner that meets expectations? So that's ultimately what the checklist is going to include, all of these different elements that you're saying yes or no. Each of these things is present. And maybe you do go a little bit more in depth, more than just yes or no, but you don't necessarily have to. So take a look at that. Like I said, there are a couple of different examples that will give you a couple of different approaches so you can see what works best with that for you. So that's the treatment integrity checklist part. The graph for Part C we did talk about briefly. We talked about the The video, the YouTube video about how to create a graph really showed you more the graph for part C than the graph for part B. And the reason for that is because the graph in part C is going to show all of your baseline data, and then there's going to be that line where you have your intervention, and then following that, we're going to have the data that shows what happened following the intervention. So you'll include that graph there, and then you'll discuss that in a narrative form as well a bit. And then connecting back to the annotated bibliography, you also are citing 3 sources here from recent peer-reviewed sources. And you'll make sure that you talk about generalization and maintenance of these skills as well. So again, make sure that you go through the template and hit on every point, go through the rubric and make sure that you're including it to the level that we're expecting there. After you do this analysis, you're going to reflect on the process. And there's a full guide for what you should be reflecting on in the template. After part C is concluded, you are going to include references. So yes, you will be including a references page, and you will also be including your annotated bibliography in part C as well. So you're submitting the annotated bibliography April 5th in the Dropbox, and then you're just going to cut and paste it right into the end of your project there. There are several appendices that will need to be included, so you've got to make sure that you have that in there as well. When you submit your full project, you're going to, so you've already submitted part A and part B. Instead of submitting part C separately, you're now just going to submit the entire project. And when you do that, you're going to make sure, go through and look at the template, look at the examples, and make sure that you are including a title page, make sure that you're following APA format, and then make sure that you have all of these appendices, as it should be all part of one document. And the reason for that is because this is a CAPE assessment, and so you will be submitting this not only to the Dropbox by April 12th before our class, but you're also going to submit this to Foliotech. I would strongly prefer that you submit them in both places at the same time. If you need a reminder on Foliotech, you access Foliotech through eCampus. That's really the only way to do it now. And there's a little link in the upper right-hand corner of eCampus. If you have any issues with that, shoot me an email and let me know. And otherwise, that's the paper portion of your project. So then we are going to present these projects in class. The presentation portion, I hope, will be low stress. For you, you've done a tremendous amount of work. I think that it's only fair that you have the opportunity to share this work that you've done with your class. I am going to insert a little reminder here that, again, the purpose of this project is the process. So the purpose of this project is not, I implemented a super helpful, super beneficial intervention, and it was really effective, and my graphs look beautiful. That's not what this project is about. There's as much, if not more, to learn from an intervention that was not successful. So don't worry about that. If you fall into that category, if your intervention wasn't super successful, or if your students suddenly stopped the behavior before you even did your intervention, it's all okay. You're just going to mention that in your presentation. So for your presentation, I'm going to include this document in the email that I'm sending to you. It's super quick. It's going to be essentially a 6-7 slide presentation. I'm just adding something right now. Okay, so and you don't make it as boring as I made it. I wanted to give you a template for it, but you can jazz it up a little. Each person will have 5 to 7 minutes total to discuss their project. Again, massive project, 5 to 7 minutes isn't going to cover everything, but that's okay. We have a large class, and so we're going to make it work with 5 to 7 minutes. So you're going to start with a student overview. You're going to tell us just the basics. On your next slide, I want to see your competing pathways. So on that slide, you're going to include an image of your competing pathways, just so that we can all have that visual and that we all sort of have the same visual, like, okay, this is how we collected our data. This is what we noticed. This is how we hypothesized. And you're going to describe the target behavior and you're going to describe the replacement behavior. I think that that's just a really good way to sort of summarize that beginning process, that part A, part B area. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to, on one slide, so everyone's going to have the same 7 slides, right? On slide number 4, you are going to discuss your intervention. What you have to do on slide number 4 is you're going to have to include something visual. So you're either going to include a photo of the intervention that you used, if it's something static like a token economy board, or preferably you're going to include a brief video that shows you implementing the intervention. Quick disclaimer, you are probably not doing that in your class with your student because parents probably haven't signed off on that being okay. So how do you do that? You either are going to go through the motions as the teacher without a student, or you can have someone step in and pretend to be the student in the situation. But it's just in order for us to get a more well-rounded picture of what the intervention actually is, I would love to see what it looks like for you to implement it. So I'm strongly encouraging you to go the video route, not the photo route. Now, regardless, keep in mind that we only have 5 to 7 minutes for each person, so you're going to, have to use your time very wisely. And then the next slide is going to be your graph, and you can just simply include that graph from part C, so that we have a visual there. If you included multiple graphs in part B and you feel like it would be beneficial to show some of those graphs from part B as well as the graph from part C, that's okay too. It just kind of depends on what you were graphing. Finally, the last, or second to last rather, slide is reflection. So you just kind of want to put in here, like, what's your takeaway here? What did you learn from this process? Did you have assumptions going into this process? And what did those assumptions pan out to be? So just consider a brief piece of reflection there. And it might be some of it that you're pulling from part C. And then the last slide will be just a list of your references. Okay, so that's that for presentations. Again, 5 to 7 minutes long. You're creating it in PowerPoint. Everyone's using the same template. You can make it look fancy and beautiful, but just make sure that you have the same 6 key slides with the same titles. You're going to submit that in the Dropbox before class on the 12th, and then of course you'll come prepared to present on the 12th. Finally, you are going to do 2 things with your hours log. One, you are going to bring a hard copy on the 12th. This is imperative. I need a hard copy of this, and it needs to be signed off by your cooperating teacher. Just to clarify, I know that some of you are in teaching positions. You may not sign off as your cooperating teacher. You are you, and your cooperating teacher is someone else. So make sure that you've got the distinct signatures on there. And then you will also be submitting that log to Foliotech. And I'm going to give you more information on the Foliotech piece of it when we actually meet in class. So that's that. Again, I'm sorry that we're not meeting in person tonight. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns over the next couple of weeks. And I look forward to seeing you on April 12th. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.